Welcome back to the channel, where Fairmont Crest never stays quiet for long, and every secret comes with a price. Today's story tears straight through the illusion of control and drops us into a moment so explosive it changes the oxygen in the room. Dani delivers a truth that hits like a hammer. She's pregnant, and Andre is the father. No warning, no soft landing, just a single revelation that turns certainty into panic, power into weakness, and love into a battlefield. Because in this world, a baby isn't just a baby. It's leverage, it's a weapon, it's a ticking clock that forces impossible choices. Was this fate? A reckless mistake? Or a trap built by someone who's been waiting for the perfect moment to strike? And if Andre's first instinct is to deny, to run, to destroy the story before it destroys him, how far will he go before the truth becomes the thing that finally breaks him? Stay with me, because the closer we look, the darker it gets, and the questions behind this pregnancy might be more dangerous than the answer. Andre felt as if every illusion of control had been ripped away the moment Dani set the truth down between them like evidence on an interrogation table. She was pregnant with his child. There was no hysterics, no tears to beg for mercy or hold him in place, only a calmness so unnerving it made Andre the one who lost balance. In that instant, the world around him warped, as if someone had turned the volume of everything down until all that remained was the frantic alarm of his own heartbeat, the blood hammering in his temples, the sharp pull of breath catching in his throat. He stared at Dani the way a man stares at a con so perfectly staged it didn't need theatrics to be lethal. He tried to summon the reflex he had always relied on, the instinct of someone who believed the right question could flip any board. Where was the proof? Surely it was a mistake, some miscalculation, some trap designed to force him into a responsibility he had never been ready to claim. But the harder he searched for a crack to pry open, the more he fell into a void, because Dani offered him nothing he could grab and twist. Her steadiness was a cold mirror, reflecting his panic back at him, and that reflection humiliated him, as though her composure alone was enough to declare she hadn't come to negotiate but to deliver a sentence. Inside Andre, shock turned quickly into fear, and fear ignited the raw anger of a man shoved against a wall. Not anger at the child, still only an idea, still only a growing truth, but anger at the sensation of being stripped of choice without ever signing consent. Part of him screamed that this was manipulation, that Dani was using a future life as a noose around his neck, forcing him to stand where she wanted him. Another part, deeper and more vicious, whispered that if it was true, he had lit this fire himself long ago and simply chosen to look away because he had grown addicted to believing anything could be fixed with the right pivot at the right time. Andre began digging through memory the way someone digs through a room that has been overturned, desperate to find the detail that could send the story in another direction. Had that night really been clear? Was he sure he remembered it correctly? Were there blank spaces in his mind from alcohol, exhaustion, the kind of reckless impulse he had allowed himself to savor as a private reward? And the more he searched, the more he met terrifying silences, broken sequences, missing links, moments he had dismissed as minor that now returned as needles. Dani, meanwhile, did not rush to explain. Her silence drove Andre mad, because it was not the silence of someone pleading, it was the silence of someone who had decided. In Fairmont Crest, silence was the most refined weapon, because it made the other person speaks for you, confess your fears on your behalf without you lifting a finger. Andre realized that too late, when he heard himself spinning possibilities like lifelines. Maybe Dani was mistaken, maybe someone had coached her, maybe this was an attack from an enemy trying to corner him, or a setup meant to lock him into a web of relationships he could never escape. He hated the fact that he was thinking like prey, but he also understood the rules of that place. Every secret had a price, and every new life could become a share in a power war. Andre's panic was not only the fear of fatherhood, it was the fear of becoming a pawn. Yet the moment he tried to frame it as a conspiracy to save himself, the truth struck with ruthless simplicity. Dani's eyes did not tremble. There was no fracture of doubt, no telltale sign of someone telling a lie too large to carry. Andre, who had always prided himself on reading people like strategies, suddenly found himself facing an opponent his skills could not reliably decode. If Dani was telling the truth, what did she want? What kind of responsibility was she demanding? Was she trying to bind him with the title of family? Or was she trying to ruin him, forcing him to pay for things he had done while believing no one was watching. That question shifted the direction of his anger, sliding it into something closer to confusion. And in that confusion came another brutal realization. In every theory he built, there was one element he could not control: time. If there truly was a life growing inside her, every day that passed was another day Andre lost leverage. From confusion, Andre slipped into defense. He fought to keep his face from revealing the collapse underneath, clinging to calm as if it were armor. But the armor cracked under the rush of thoughts. If this became public, what alliances would it shatter? What plans would it destroy? What doors would it force open that he had spent years sealing? Andre had always believed he was clever enough to move through Fairmont Crest without leaving footprints, but a child was a footprint that could not be erased. A child was an endless tether, living proof, a connection others could seize and yank whenever they chose. He pictured the eyes in that community, the parties where everyone smiled with knives hidden in their hands, the congratulations that could turn into indictments overnight. He pictured Dani becoming a center of attention, or a target, in a game he wasn't sure he could protect her from. And bitterly, Andre realized his greatest fear wasn't losing freedom. It was being forced to choose between protecting Dani and protecting himself. Dani was not entirely the victor either. Her calmness was a wall built fast, because behind it could be a storm she had swallowed to avoid looking weak. She knew Andre was the kind of man who would twist any circumstance toward his advantage, who would look for exits through the smallest cracks, and so she could not afford to show emotion. If she showed fear, he would weaponize it. If she showed need, he would bargain with it. So Dani chose to make him face the truth without a handle to grab. But that choice carried danger of its own. In Fairmont Crest, a pregnant woman could be cherished or hunted. Who would be the first to probe the story, the first to whisper that this was a move, the first to verify it and turn it into a headline that dragged them both down? And more terrifying still, was Dani absolutely certain it was Andre's child? Or was she also standing in gaps of memory, the only difference being that she refused to panic in front of him? The tension in Andre sharpened as he began imagining worst-case scenarios. Perhaps someone had been watching them. Perhaps medical files could be altered, appointments steered into the right system at the right moment to manufacture proof. Andre did not want to believe it, because believing it meant admitting he was living inside a network he did not fully understand. But not wanting to believe only fed his obsession with one question. Why would Dani tell him like this, and why now? Was she racing the clock because someone else was about to speak first? Was she being pressured, cornered, until the only move left was to toss the bomb into his hands? Or was Dani using time itself as a blade, slicing away his control until he was forced to reveal who he really was? In the chaos, Andre touched a fear he had never named, the fear of being seen. Not seen making mistakes, but seen in weakness, in helplessness, in the truth that he could not use money or influence or intellect to command a living being. He suddenly loathed his own instincts, his urge to deny, to escape, to turn Dani into a liar so he could walk away. And at the same time, he resented Dani for placing him in a position that forced him to confront the ugliest parts of himself. Andre understood that if he reacted wrong, he would become the traitor in Dani's story, and that child would become a curse. But if he reacted right, if he accepted it, stepped into it, surrendered part of his life, was he simply signing a sentence written by someone else? The more he thought, the clearer it became that invisible forces were pulling them toward a war neither of them could avoid. If Dani kept the secret, she would isolate herself and become vulnerable. If Dani went public, she would be inspected, judged, turned into a symbol in family battles. If Andre denied it, he would be branded cruel, yet he might preserve enough distance to maneuver. If Andre acknowledged it, he would be bound by duty and become more exposed than ever. Every choice was a trap in a different shape, and the most frightening part was that neither Andre nor Dani could be sure whether they were fighting each other or being dragged into a game designed by a third hand. From the outside, everything might still look normal. Fairmont Crest still glittered, faces still remained polite, handshakes still felt warm. But underneath, a secret had been activated, and Andre could almost hear the gears of an entire power machine beginning to turn. He didn't know who would be first to sniff it out, who would exploit it for revenge, who would use it to blackmail, who would offer a solution that sounded compassionate but was really control. And the biggest question, the one that chilled him more than anything, was whether Dani was carrying a child or carrying the key to something darker about Andre himself. If someone wanted to use that child to pull Andre into a larger scheme, what was the ultimate target and why him? If Dani was not manipulating him, who would become the next manipulator the moment the news leaked? And if Andre truly was the father, what pieces of his past would be unearthed alongside the existence of that life? Andre stood before Dani with the sensation of having lost every ounce of control while being forced to choose before he could even breathe. He still clung to a single sentence to save himself, repeating it in his mind like a charm. It can't be true. But his panic betrayed him, because if there were nothing to fear, he would not be shaking like this. And in the moment he realized he feared Dani was telling the truth more than he feared anything else, Andre also understood that from here on, his decisions would no longer belong solely to him. They would be the decisions of a man stepping into a battlefield where emotion and power mixed, where an unborn life had already become the center of betrayal, conspiracy, and questions no one dared answer. Who would be the first to force Andre to pay? Did Dani truly control the secret, or was she only holding the bomb for a few seconds before it exploded? And when Fairmont Crest began to smell blood, would it protect the child, or use it as an excuse to crush both Andre and Dani to the bitter end?